Welcome to the GMC March membership meeting, which is going to be focused on public safety. My name's Peggy Kelsey. I'm the board chair of the GMC, and I would like to start by welcoming some new members to today's meeting and into GMC membership. So as I call your name, if you want, either stand or wave your arms, whatever you want to do, so folks can see you and introduce themselves. All right, Christine, I'm going to do my best here. Christine Hojanaki, did I get that right? There you go. Great. Chief Development Officer for UPath. Elizabeth Haas, partner at Foley & Lardner, right here. Kimberly Thakin, Chief Operating Officer, Godfrey & Kahn. And Jessica Zeiger, Co-Chair of Capital Markets and Commercial Lending for Polsinelli. So let's give them a round of applause. Welcome. We look forward to getting to know you better and including your perspectives and your leadership in our work at the GMC. As is the norm here at the GMC, we invite you to introduce yourself to at least one person that you don't know, or if you see someone across the room who's coming in and as you're chatting at any meeting that seems to be looking for a friendly face, go right up there and introduce yourself. So we know networking is an important part of what we do here. So GMC member input is especially important as we embark on a journey to address public safety, an area our members and our community have outlined as a strategic priority. Shortly, Joel will introduce our robust agenda for today's meeting focused on this topic, and it will include, assuming he comes, which I'm assuming he will, an update from Mayor Johnson, who hopefully isn't at the Milwaukee Athletic Club. Importantly, as we focus on improving public safety, we must not lose sight of clear indications of trust in Milwaukee. Sorry, I just kind of called you out, but you can come on. Great things are happening here. Evidence of this increased trust in Milwaukee includes a number of businesses choosing to invest in our downtown. And as we focus on this very important subject today, again, let's not lose sight of all the great things that are happening in this community as well, things we can be really proud of. Paul Sternlieb, CEO of Enerpac, can attest to that. Enerpac recently announced its decision to move their global headquarters and over 100 employees downtown. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of your new neighbors, Paul, when I say we look forward to seeing that Enerpac Center sign on the river's edge later this year or early next. We thought it'd be insightful to hear directly why Enerpac made this important decision. On behalf of the GMC, I invite Paul to the podium. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Peggy, and appreciate you inviting me here. Good afternoon. I'll just make a few quick remarks, but great to be here. My name is Paul Sternlieb. I'm the CEO for Enerpac Tool Group. We were formerly Actuant, if any of you are familiar with that company. We're a premier industrial tools and services business. We're based right now in Menominee Falls, but shortly, as you heard, to be based right here in Milwaukee. Fairly global business, about $600 million in revenue, publicly listed, with about 2,100 employees globally and close to 150 here in the Milwaukee area. And we have an additional facility in Columbus, Wisconsin, near Madison, one of our larger manufacturing facilities. So a big presence in the Wisconsin area. We help customers safely and reliably tackle some of the most challenging jobs around the world. And as you just heard, we just recently announced that we'll be moving our global headquarters from Menominee Falls here to Milwaukee, what is now known as the ASQ Center and will be known as Enerpac Center. It's the 648 Plankinton building. We had a lease that will expire here shortly, and we knew that was obviously coming up. We started looking at alternative locations quite a while ago. We took a number of factors into account, including obviously commuting distances for our current employee base, but also what was the right size and shape of the facility that we wanted for the future of the company and our headquarters, and the environment and the layout that would be kind of conducive to driving more innovation, more collaboration, and frankly, access to a lot more amenities. If any of you know where we are in Menominee Falls, we have a nice view of the dump, but there's not a lot else within walking distance, I would say. So we chose 648 Plankinton. We'll be leasing the entire 4th floor. It's close to 60,000 square feet. And really what we love about it is, first and foremost, it's obviously right here, very, very much in the heart of the city. Access to phenomenal amenities, food, hotels, fitness, entertainment options. Very vibrant environment, as we know. Also very important to us was talent, both retention and attraction of key talent for our organization. In fact, the feedback from our employee base, largely speaking, has been very, very positive to date since we announced the news. And we're really excited about our plans. We're in the midst now of just getting started, working with our general contractor on obviously demolition and all the construction of the new space. It will be a very open environment with a lot of collaboration space. We think that will help create a very dynamic and inspiring environment for folks on our team to really spur very strong collaboration and innovation. The design will really reflect who we are as a company, which is really an industrial products business. No offense to law firms or accounting firms, but if you walk in our office today, it could be a law firm or accounting firm, not necessarily an industrial products company. So we want the space to reflect who we are. The location, the naming rights, the signage will give us a lot more visibility in the community. So we're looking forward to becoming part of the downtown business community here. We're targeting our move-in by the end of the calendar year. And just a few call-outs and thank yous. Finally, our real estate broker team at CBRE for all the great work they did. Josh Kersnack at Hempel Real Estate, who will be our landlord. Kraus Anderson, our general contractor. We're also working with Creative Business Interiors and all the design, layout, furnishings. And certainly I'd be remiss if I didn't extend a big thank you to Mayor Johnson and to the city of Milwaukee for all their support and facilitation in helping make this move possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for those remarks and for your commitment to the community. We all believe in the community, and I think there are times when we have the opportunity to show it, and you have done that, and we truly appreciate this. I had the chance last week to tour on its opening day the Fiserv headquarters, which is kind of bookends the opposite side of the former Grand Avenue Mall. And the mayor was there in his orange tie to cut the ribbon. And I mean, it was an amazing thing that they did at Fiserv. I don't know if you're going to do the same thing at Enerpac, Paul, but they turned the lights off on Friday in Brookfield, and everybody, those hundreds of employees, were there on Monday morning downtown. So that was a sight to behold. But to be there truly was interesting. And another thing that was interesting about it was walking through and seeing. This is either a reflection of who I am and where I'm getting to be, or a reflection of the workforce here, but how young the employment base was there at Fiserv. And I think that's part of what continues to attract people to our downtown. And so we truly appreciate that. And we appreciate what Fiserv has done and their commitment to the community. They certainly are trying to paint the town orange, both with their commitment to the Fiserv Forum, and the naming rights, but also to their commitment downtown. I want to congratulate our member Bob Howe and the Fiserv team for what they have done. I spoke about that visit last week on WTMJ radio. I just wanted to make sure people were aware, in case you want to avoid WTMJ at the noon hour on Thursdays, I'm going to start to do a regular segment with Greg Matzik and Jessica Tai. And so if you do have things that you think the community should be engaged in discussions on, a lot of it is some of the topics that we're talking about here. But if you have things that you want to offer up, please let me know. They are very open. In the way that WTMJ has changed some of their programming, it very much now reflects the community, and they want topics and people from the community to be there. So also don't be alarmed or surprised if at some point we call you and ask you to be part of that, or ask you to think about doing that as well. With regard to the MPS referendum survey, we sent out last week a survey that invited you to answer 4 or 5 questions about that. As of the end of last week, we had about 40 responses. We'd like to get that to 100 by the end of this week. So if you have a chance to do that, we will send out today an update or that includes a link to that survey. In addition, the Policy Forum, as they often do, did a terrific report on this that was released this morning that outlines some details, and so we will send that to you as well, and just hope that you can respond to that, because that will inform what we do over the next 3 or 4 weeks leading up to the April 2nd election. So again, appreciate your input on that. Onto a little bit of the committee work. The Member Engagement Committee is on the fast track for kickoff and continuing their work. Greg Marcus and Angela Damiani have helped create a committee charter. They've identified some initial goals. They've recruited an interested group of members to assist in this work. Ultimately, this group of members will help steer future meeting topics, locations, small group convenings, other membership engagement strategies, and ways that you can help shape where we continue to evolve as an organization and you continue to help this community evolve. So appreciate everybody's involvement there. Related to the conversations we've had around early education, Langston Verdeen of our staff at the GMC and Vincent Lyles will join me in convening a group of interested members on this to discuss early childhood efforts at Mount Mary in the next few weeks as well. I want to thank Betsy Brenner, who I think I saw walk in earlier, who took part in consideration of the candidates for the Innovation Director for the city of Milwaukee. We expect the mayor will make that announcement soon, not when I announce him in just a couple minutes, but that's an important position for executing on some of the work that we have already done and where the city is going in the future with their efforts towards long-term fiscal sustainability, but also how can we make sure that we are in Milwaukee at the front end of some of the innovative efforts that are going on around the country. And so that's partnership that we'll be doing, and this position will be very important to that. And Betsy sat in on those interviews a few weeks ago, and I think from all feedback that I got from the city was a great contributor, informed by some of the work that we have already done in this effort. So she, David Gay, and other interested GMC members will meet at the end of this month to start to dig in on the ways that the city can activate some of those options from the city's operational review and the most constructive ways that we can ensure long-term strength in the public sector. So on to today's topic. It is surrounding public safety and follows a convening that we did about 2 weeks ago with more than a dozen GMC members, hosted by one of our co-chairs on this effort, Dan Bader. He was joined by the other co-chair, Earnell Lucas of Fiserv, former Sheriff Lucas, and we started to stake out our path towards a stronger community collaboration on this issue. You're going to hear more from them in a few minutes, but we'll also reach out after today to gauge the interest of members in being more deeply involved in these conversations in the coming weeks. Finally, before I introduce our first speaker, we'll meet in April at Wright Heights' new headquarters in Walker's Point. Our topic there will be along infrastructure, with what we hope will be an invigorating, balanced discussion and consideration of the future of I-794. If you haven't seen Wright Heights' new space, we expect that the topic will be lively, but the investment and the commitment that Wright Heights has made is worth the trip on its own. They'll provide parking and lunch for all our guests as well, and you'll get more details on that in the days to come. So on to today's topic and speakers. A week ago, Mayor Johnson presented his State of the City address and doubled down on his desire to grow Milwaukee. His aspiration, as we all know now, to become a city of 1 million residents is something that most of us, and if not all of us, support. But Milwaukee's long-term growth will only be successful if we can assure residents, visitors, and businesses that we are a safe and secure place. Collectively, the GMC, Mayor Johnson, the city, many partners are committed to creating a more secure and prosperous Milwaukee. Today we'll hear from Mayor Johnson about his vision for public safety in our community. new approaches from his administration, and some specific strategies from his Office of Community Wellness and Safety and Vision Zero. Dan Bader, GMC member and CEO of Bader Philanthropies, and Earnell Lucas, Vice President of Security for Fiserv, will then host a candid conversation with the mayor. We've also invited Rob Henken, the president of the Policy Forum, to provide an update on the joint research that the Forum and the GMC will undertake in 2024. There are lots of ways to approach this issue. Our research approach focused mainly on strengthening institutions in the community that are part of the public safety infrastructure. Rob's going to briefly outline those efforts before we engage in a conversation amongst the group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to start with to our Mayor, Cavalier Johnson.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me here again today. Thanks again for having me here today. I want to talk about some crime in Milwaukee. First of all, let me say thank you to Joel for that wonderful introduction and the overview about some of the conversation that we'll have today. I can appreciate some of the quips that Joel had. Thank you for noticing my tie at the Fiserv opening last week. I did switch ties that day. I had a blue tie for State of the City and then put on an orange tie for Fiserv. So Paul, when Interpac is ready for the opening, let me know what color tie I should wear and we can coordinate that way. So again, I want to talk about some crime and safety trends here in the city of Milwaukee. I've got a couple of slides on that, but really would like to have a conversation just generally about the topic. And I know that to put a finer point on some of these issues, our director of the Office of Community Wellness and Safety, formerly the Office of Violence Prevention, Ashanti Hamilton, is here as well. And I think that's important. I think it's really important because when we talk about crime, much like I mentioned in the State of the City address just last week, it's about more than just law enforcement. Certainly law enforcement plays a critical role in public safety in Milwaukee, but it's not just the police. And if Chief Norman were here, he'd tell you himself that police of and by themselves cannot be and will not be the be-all, end-all to the public safety challenges that we face here in the city of Milwaukee. And so, as I mentioned in the State of the City address last week, and as is presented to you right now, the city is focused on crime reduction and improved public safety by increasing both accountability as well as prevention. And I think those things are really, really important. This slide just goes to show you the fact that over the course of the past number of years, data, Part 1 crimes, as the Federal Bureau of Investigation outlines and are falling in the city of Milwaukee. And I think that's a positive trend. When I did an address about crime in the first quarter to wrap up the year prior, we talked about how crime in Milwaukee had dropped about 15%, not in 2023, but the year prior to that. And then this time around, we're talking about crime dropping in Milwaukee 9% on top of that. Those are really, really good signs, especially when you look at things like homicide, when you look at things like vehicle theft, when you look at things like property crime, those things are going down. And I think it's useful to have me as mayor, not just me as mayor, but the police chief and others, Office of Violence Prevention, or Community Wellness and Safety rather, that are working all towards those same ends with the unique tools that we have in our tool belts to address those issues. I think what that is doing is sending the message out to community members all across Milwaukee that we value public safety, right? That we do not take that for granted, that we know that if we want to see Milwaukee grow in the way that I've outlined, the way that I talk about, safe city. We need to be a safer city, and that's exactly the direction that we're moving to here in Milwaukee. So in addition to the drop in homicides here, again, it's not just issues around policing. It's not just issues around community wellness and safety. As Joel mentioned as well, the city of Milwaukee is a Vision Zero community too. And the reason that we're a Vision Zero community in Milwaukee, and I'll get to this slide in a moment, the reason that we're a Vision Zero community in Milwaukee is because I was the city council president, we worked to make sure that we push forward a Vision Zero strategy in this city. So we're only the second community, the second one in the entire state of Wisconsin that has lined up with the Vision Zero principles. And so our goal is to reduce traffic deaths in Milwaukee over the course of the next 15 or so years. And we've got a Vision Zero director who is working to develop plans around making our streets safer. And we've invested considerable American Rescue Plan Act dollars into working to make sure that the streets are safer in Milwaukee for all users of the roadway. It doesn't matter if you're behind the wheel of a vehicle, it doesn't matter if you're riding a scooter, it doesn't matter if you're a bicyclist, a stroller, a pedestrian or the like. We want to make the streets safer for everybody. This slide, again, goes back to the issue of homicides in Milwaukee. And just to put a finer point on the fact that crime is dropping in Milwaukee with our focus on those two areas, right, on accountability as well as prevention. So all of us know that from 2016 to 2019, we saw a steady decline in homicides in the city. And that was a good trend. And of course, Milwaukee, much like other major cities in the United States, saw a spike during the COVID years, eventually getting us to 2022, where we saw a record-breaking 215 people in Milwaukee who died by homicide here in the city. Totally unacceptable, but issues that we're working on. And so the past couple of years, again, going back to 2023, we saw significant reductions in crime, including our homicide rate dropping in that year as well, which is a positive trend and one that we intend to continue. Our Office of Community Wellness and Safety, formerly the Office of Violence Prevention, has invested significant resources in working to connect with community groups out there in the city of Milwaukee. Community groups that many times have a better reach into individuals and organizations and folks on the ground who may not see the police as a credible resource, who may not see the police as the resource that they would like to tap into in order to solve crimes in their neighborhoods. And so OVP is working very diligently, or Community Wellness and Safety rather, is working very diligently in order to build those bridges so that we have prevention. An example of this that I'd like to point out here is when the Milwaukee Bucks went on their championship run a couple of years ago, and we had, basically the fourth or fifth largest community in the state of Wisconsin packed at the Deer District. That was great. And then the following year, when we had a similar sort of activity happening, and we saw some of the shootings that happened, not at the Deer District, but elsewhere outside of the Deer District, we had to find a way to respond to that. And it was with the work of the Office of Community Wellness and Safety, in particular its director, that we work to engage young people who would be ambassadors out there, an opportunity to create jobs for young people in Milwaukee, but then also provided a way for the police and for Buck Security to have a clear line of sight of what was happening on the ground before things balloon. Now, unfortunately, that year the Bucks kind of flamed out early, which nobody was happy about. But what I was extremely happy about, is the unique thinking, the innovative thinking that got us to that point to do both. To create a job opportunity for young people in Milwaukee, and also working to make sure that we put safety at the top of the pedestal for us. And I'm sure that Ashanti will have the opportunity, if not now, at some point in the future, to talk about some of the pillars here for the Office of Community Wellness and Safety. And again, I know I keep going back and forth and saying OVP. It's new to me as well, as we've reorganized this office. But these are some of the pillars for that office. Wellness and healing is a focus. Family and interpersonal relationships is a focus. And then also working to make sure that all those are centered around community. And that's what's really, really important for us and for the approach of that particular office. So again, we play, went a little too far. Nope. All right. So again, we place a lot of emphasis. I know you guys can't probably read some of these, the text on some of these slides, but we place a lot of focus on all of those things in order to touch base, with the community to make sure that the community's voice is heard in our efforts to make sure that the Office of Community Wellness and Safety is providing the resources to folks across the city. And it's not, again, just about working to prevent gun violence crime from happening. It's all these other efforts to reduce violence in our community as well. So whether it's domestic or intimate partner violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, child abuse, community violence, certainly gun violence, and the like. The Office of Community Wellness and Safety has so many tentacles out there focusing on all of those things. And I think that's a positive trend for us to continue because that's what people are asking for. That's what people are asking for. And when you look at domestic violence, when you look at sexual assault, when you look at child abuse, and some of these other factors, you cannot have a police officer at every home. You can't. You can't have an officer on every single corner. You simply cannot. And that's where an office like this and a resource like this with trusted messengers and trusted folks like Office of Community Wellness and Safety are able to intercede and make sure folks have access to the resources that they need. So, and I think that we'll probably have the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more when we get into the discussion we'll have with Sheriff Lucas and with Dan Bader. But what can you do today to create safety? I always talk about this, right, is that when I was an alderman and I was over in my old aldermanic district just this morning visiting a school, Grand Toaster Drive Elementary School, and I had many, many community meetings there. And what I would tell my constituents who are present there is that all of us have work to do in order to increase safety in Milwaukee. And there are some very simple things that each and every single one of us can do, especially if you're a resident in the city of Milwaukee, in order to tighten up the fabric of our neighborhoods. At the very least of these is working to make sure you know the people who live in front of you, behind you, and on either side of you. And that way you're starting to tighten up the fabric of our neighborhoods. It's important to do that. You watch people, you watch kids grow up, you get to know people, you get to know their habits, you watch out for them if they're gone or out of town and things like that. Those relationships become familial, and when those relationships become familial, that's how you improve public safety overall in Milwaukee. This is another opportunity to increase safety in Milwaukee. The Milwaukee Police Department has a program, a new camera program, initially called FUSIS, but it's Community Connect Milwaukee, where we have businesses in Milwaukee to have cameras that are installed that can provide a direct linkage into the City of Milwaukee Police Department's Fusion Center. And so our intelligence center will be able to have access, if you choose, and you can structure it the way you like, but potentially they could have access directly into those camera feeds, having more eyes on the ground and using technology really as a force multiplier in the city. Because again, you can't have a police officer on every block or at every intersection in Milwaukee. And so that's a prime opportunity for businesses in this room and even outside of this room to partner with us and partner with our police department in order to have a positive trend as it relates to crime in Milwaukee. Reckless driving, fatal crashes. And I know Jessica Weinberg from our Vision Zero office is here as well. When I talk about reckless driving in Milwaukee, obviously the people, you see some of the trends, some of the changes that the streets have had in the time that I've been mayor, and there's more to come. And I announced at the State of the City address that there's going to be 45 additional projects. We had 50 last year that are still in the works, and this year we're going to start on 45 additional projects in order to address the issue of reckless driving in Milwaukee, stopping people from passing on the right, reducing some of these wide lanes that we have out here in the city, making it safer for, again, all those users of the roadway, whether you're behind the wheel of a vehicle, a bicyclist, a pedestrian, a scooter rider, what have you. We're making those investments right now, and in no small part thanks to the investment that we received from President Joe Biden and the American Rescue Plan Act. But we're making those investments, and I think it's having an impact on fatal crashes that we're seeing in Milwaukee. But there's obviously still more work to do. I oftentimes get notifications about crashes that have happened in Milwaukee, and so there's still more work to do. I'm glad that Jessica is on the team working to make sure that we have plans in place in order to address issues around reckless driving here in the city of Milwaukee. So again, Vision Zero is a citywide effort and really an international effort. We're the only other city in Wisconsin, save for our state capital in Madison, that's a Vision Zero community with the goal to eliminate traffic deaths by 2037, 15 years from the time that we started. And so of the traffic calming measures that you see out there, there are bump outs that are in place, raised crosswalks, lane reductions, lane narrowing. We've put many streets on road diets, crosswalks near schools, and not just schools, but also parks. We're making investments with ARPA dollars to make sure that crossing to school is safer for about 18 different schools this year. Protected bike lanes. I said in the state of the city address last year that I want to have 50 miles of additional bike lanes either completed or under construction consideration by 2026, and we're well on our way to doing that as well. So a lot of work that's happening here, and I'm very, very happy with the direction that we're making with our Vision Zero concept here in the city of Milwaukee. All right, and I think that that'll present us an opportunity to hear from Rob at some point here. Or is it Rob? All right, there we go. Thank you, guys.
First, let me thank the GMC for inviting me here, being part of this committee with Dan. And also, I want to thank Mayor Johnson, and I don't see Commissioner Crump if he's in the room, and your entire administration for the work and the effort of getting Fiserv into downtown Milwaukee. It was truly a journey, and for this retired law enforcement executive, what a great accomplishment it is, a fitting accomplishment. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was asked to stick with the questions that I have here because otherwise the time would run out. So I'm going to stay on time here. But first, Mr. Mayor, as we noted, Fiserv moved hundreds of employees into downtown Milwaukee from outside the city on last week, joining numerous other who have made that investment in downtown Milwaukee. You were there and saw the excitement of those who were thrilled about coming into downtown Milwaukee. However, there are still some who remain a little bit skeptical and uncomfortable about this move. What are the steps that your administration is taking to ensure that our employees and all in the downtown business district are safe? And are you doing anything different than other cities, some of which are losing employees from their central business districts?
Well, thank you, Sheriff Lucas. I think that when you look at Milwaukee compared to other cities, and I know because I've talked to mayors from across the United States, many cities and many mayors are envious of the position that we're in Milwaukee. We continue to see growth in businesses moving into the city where they're seeing the opposite happen. And that's a shame for them, but it's really, really a great opportunity for us. And I think that one of the reasons why businesses are choosing to come to Milwaukee is, one, because they want to make sure they have access to some of the best talent that we have here, not just in the city, but also in the region. That's located here. They're located in cities, right? That's where folks want to be. They want to be in an urban core. They want to be in a dynamic space. And that's what we offer here in the city of Milwaukee. But I think one of the other things that is hopefully encouraging businesses to look at Milwaukee as a place to do business and even uproot their headquarters or other spaces and moving into the city is the fact that, at least since I've been the mayor of the city, I've talked about working to make sure that we increase safety here. That is a key priority for me. It's a key priority for me, and not just for downtown, but for neighborhoods all across the entire city of Milwaukee. But as it relates to, what are we doing that some other cities are not doing? Look, I have stood up as the mayor of the city and somebody who advocated for additional resources from Madison, and not just agreed to because the state wanted this to happen. I wanted to do this as well in terms of adding police officers to our force in Milwaukee. Over the course of the past number of years, we've seen the number of police officers in Milwaukee dwindle, not because they were fired, not because they were laid off, but just because our funding sources they just weren't keeping up with where they needed to be. We saw significant reductions in support from the state, not just to Milwaukee, but local communities around Wisconsin. In having the ability to go there to correct some of that, I wanted to make a commitment to make sure we hired additional police officers here in the city of Milwaukee. And I think that is also helping to encourage businesses to look at the city of Milwaukee as a place for doing business, because you have a mayor who's really concerned about issues around public safety. Now, I know that reckless driving is not an issue just here. It's an issue, and again, I talk to mayors from all over the country. It's an issue nationally. But here in Milwaukee, we're not just talking about it. And look, change is difficult, right? People can be concerned about, moving to a different place or seeing new improvements to the roadway. That's change, right? And sometimes that's difficult for people to digest. But we're not just talking about reckless driving in Milwaukee. We're actually implementing things to address the issue of reckless driving in Milwaukee. And so I think that business leaders, both here in the city and those outside the city that want to do business here, they see that we're actually taking action. We're actually taking action to address the things that folks are most concerned about in the realm of public safety in Milwaukee, while also being this dynamic place where you can find the most attractive talent, I believe, in the entire state of Wisconsin.
That's okay. Come on.
Don't be shy.
Good afternoon, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to thank you and your administration and the Common Council for your commitment to public safety and wellness. I remember when you guys started putting in the bump outs and the protected bike lanes, and there was a fair amount of grumbling, I would say, from residents about that. But I have to tell you, just thinking about the other day, driving as I do often through the city, it's starting to feel a little safer. So I think that the commitment and the action means a lot to people, and it means a lot to me. As you know, Bader Philanthropies moved in 2018 from 3rd Ward here to MLK Drive in the Romney neighborhood. And because of that, we've had a great opportunity to visit with thousands of residents and talk about their experiences living in Milwaukee and their experiences in life in general. And one of the things that we hear often are people talking about safety. And we have an opportunity to spend a lot of time with seniors in particular. And the seniors are often talking about safety on the streets, safety in their own home. And a lot of times they don't feel safe. So I know we have these wonderful initiatives that are out there that you've talked about and that you and the Common Council are rolling out over this year and next year and future years. But it does come down to the perception. Like, how do people feel safe? And we want people to enjoy the summers. We want people to get out. We want people to feel safe in their own home. How do you address that feeling of safety?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, because somebody once famously said perception is reality, right? Perception is reality, and so in order to improve the perception, I mean, I think again it goes back to the steps you take, the actual actions that you take. And for us, you talk about seniors, I think about my time as 2nd District Alderman, and I lived in the Capitol Heights neighborhood just to the west of Midtown Center. And 63rd and Free Branch is where I lived. And I would go to, and I still sometimes take the drive out of my way just because I'm comfortable with the store. I still take some time to go up to the Pick and Save over at Midtown Center when Dominique sends me out to get whatever. And so when I was alderman, I lived on the north side of Capitol. I had a part of my district that went a block south of Capitol, over into Melvina. And I had senior citizens who lived south of Capitol who would not come to our neighborhood grocery store, a Pick and Save of all places, right? One of the bigger grocery providers here in our community. And they were afraid to do that because of the perception. They felt like they were prisoners in their own neighborhoods, prisoners in their own homes, that they could not simply go across Capitol Drive because of the perception of the reckless, dangerous driving that was happening. And so how do we respond? Well, I'll tell you how we responded. We responded the way that we have been with the improvements that we're making to the roadway with bump outs and these pinned on curb extensions and the like. Making the ability to pass on the right significantly harder for people who choose, and it is a choice. People make the choice to drive dangerously. But not just that, we also work with the Milwaukee Police Department under the leadership of Chief Jeffrey Norman to launch the Traffic Safety Unit, which anybody in this room, right, if you see reckless driving activity happening on the streets of Milwaukee, you can go to mpdtsu.org, punch in the information where you see that reckless driving activity happening, and that'll queue up the TSU that this is a space that they actually need to come and do some watching out at, come and do some patrolling in. All right, so we launched both of those initiatives in order to help improve the perception that it's dangerous out there. And then even now, in the budget that I proposed for 2024, it calls for 3 classes at the Milwaukee Police Academy. And the sheriff knows this as well, that's the maximum number of classes that we're able to produce at the Milwaukee Police Academy in a given year. The budget that I proposed for 2024 also includes enough funding for 65 recruits in each of those 3 classes, which is also the maximum number that we're able to produce from the academy in a single given year. So when you talk about the perception of crime, we're taking concrete and sometimes literal concrete actions in order to improve that perception of crime and disorder.
I just want to applaud that because I don't know if any time in my professional career where we had 3 classes of 65 going into the recruit class, and to have that is again, quite an accomplishment. While we've had to talk about traffic safety here in our community, we know that there's still a number of automobile thefts, carjackings, however, down, but still there's some unease on the streets from people in our community. Recently, you encouraged the legislature to allow the city to install red light speed cameras, and we're hopeful that that can be passed in this current session. Can you talk more about how we can use all the levers possible to attack this issue, and whether you think we are seeing long-term declines?
Sure, absolutely. So this is a prime example right now, okay? The 3 of us are sitting on a stage and we're having a conversation, and everybody in this room can hear us, and I'm not shouting in the room. And the reason I'm not shouting in the room is because we have technology, right? So we should be able to use the technology that we have at our disposal to address the challenges that we have in our community. Again, we saw reductions in the police force in Milwaukee through attrition over years. So the strength is not where it once was. We are working to get that number back up, but we're not there yet. And given the fact that we're not there yet, why should we not be availed the opportunity to use technology as a force multiplier? Because you cannot have a police officer on every single corner, especially when you're trying to address an issue like reckless driving that is proven in some instances to be fatal. So in my opinion, we should use every single tool that we have at our disposal. We should use the infrastructure upgrades that we're doing through the Department of Public Works. We should use some of the strategies that Vision Zero is enacting. Our partners in the Greater Milwaukee Urban League, who are working to make sure young people have access to driver's education, so they have true fundamentals in driving and not teaching themselves how to drive like some of my friends did in high school when driver's ed was a couple $100 and they couldn't afford it. That doesn't mean they didn't drive though. And now I'm next year will be 20 years, believe it or not, out of high school. And so that's a couple, you're teaching the next generation how to drive at that point with your own sort of foundations or lack thereof in driving. So we're attacking it from that point too. And then of course we're using enforcement, but let's use this other technology that we have at our disposal to address this issue that all of us know is a concern for people all across Milwaukee and outside of Milwaukee too. And this is not just a Milwaukee thing. This is something that's happening across the state of Wisconsin and including and in other communities across the country too. I gotten reports from some other places that while reckless driving is as bad as we have seen here, and certainly we're seeing some improvements. And as Dan said, it feels safer out there, and I can see that too. What I've heard about in places like New Orleans and others, some of the reckless driving activity there makes what happens here seem like child's play. But I don't want to get to that point. I don't want to get to that point, and I don't want to get to that point by working to make sure we take action in Milwaukee now, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Mayor, let's talk a bit about violent crime, about homicides. You mentioned the decline, right? 2023, 20%, fantastic, right? But it's still at a high compared to previous years, and I know we all want to see it come down. And you've talked about some of the efforts that you have, obviously the reorganization of OPP into the Office of Wellness and Community Safety, I know is a big piece of that. But talk about some of the other pieces that you have in place to get the violent crime down, to get the homicide down, to get the gun violence down, so that it can be a more peaceful community.
Sure, and I don't want to gloss over the Office of Community Wellness and Safety and the efforts that they're taking, reaching out to young people and communities all across the city. I just had a meeting with them I believe it was just last week, and when you look at the heat maps that the Milwaukee Police Department's Fusion Center presents to us about the concentrations of shootings, whether they're fatal or non-fatal in the city, to me they seem to be concentrated in the same areas. I have identified those: Center Street, Teutonia Avenue, and then a location on the near south side of the city. When I compare that heat map with the areas where the Office of Community Wellness and Safety focuses much of their energy on, they're in those same areas. They're in those exact same areas. And it's hard to, if my chief of staff was on the stage, he'd say it more eloquently than I would, to disprove a negative. I think that's the way you say it. Right. How do you measure something that did not happen? That's a little difficult to do. But that's what that office does and the people who work in that office, they go in there and they engage with folks who may retaliate, who may engage in violent action against somebody for whatever reason. And they may not get the credit or the notoriety that they deserve, but I'm here to tell you that I know that they're going in there, and I know that they're making a difference in neighborhoods all across Milwaukee and some of the more challenging neighborhoods across the city. So I want to thank them for all their efforts there. But again, it's not just those efforts. It's not just the police efforts. It's calling on people in the community to be a part of the solution too, because everybody has a role to play when it comes to making our city safer. Everybody does. It's not just police. It's not just them, and it can't just be. It's not just Office of Community Wellness and Safety. It's all of us. If you see something happening on your block or in your neighborhood, you got to call that stuff out. I'm constantly reminding people that you got to do that. Look, when folks sometimes quibble about the perception of safety in other communities, I say to them, people are people. It doesn't really matter where you live. People are people. That does not matter, right? And so when you look into some of these other neighborhoods, one of the things that they're doing is they're calling the stuff in. They're reporting when bad things are happening in their neighborhood. So I encourage folks, when I was an alderman, you reach out to me, let me know if you don't want your name to be out there. I can report that information anonymously on your behalf. People still have the ability to reach out to their alders to do just that. We work in conjunction with Crime Stoppers to do the exact same thing, so they can call that tip line and report information anonymously in order to address crime issues in their neighborhoods. So there's a number of resources that are out there in addition to preventative measures, and I think that's important too. Issues or things like our Earn and Learn Summer Youth Jobs program that keeps young people engaged. Things like our Camp Rise program that sprung out of our desire to make sure that kids who as young as 10 were being recruited into the Kia Boys to steal cars, providing another alternative for them. In fact, right now we're seeking to create an endowment to make sure that we can fund those programs into the future without having to continue to go to the well. It's those sorts of things that I think will help to continue to turn the tide on crime and disorder in the city of Milwaukee. And I'm proud of our efforts on it.
Thank you.
I guarantee you there were more good questions to be asked and answered up here, but we appreciate this time. And Mayor, we truly appreciate your commitment to this and the work of Dan and Earnell. So we're going to let these guys leave the stage here. I'm going to invite up Rob to briefly present on some of the joint research we're doing with the Policy Forum and the GMC this year before we turn it over to you for the last few minutes to have some conversations about what we've discussed today and where we go from here. So with that, I bring you Rob Henken.
Thank you, Joel, and thanks, by the way, for that very nice shout-out on our MPS referendum analysis, which, again, you can find on the forum's website, listpolicyforum.org. I'm going to be very brief, but, Joel, I hope you understand that you can't invite me up here without my taking the opportunity to present at least a little bit of data. So that's what I am going to do first, and then tell you about the specific research that we're going to be doing for the remainder of this year, a nice partnership between the forum and the GMC. So when I was here in September, I presented a report called Under Pressure, which had just come out in August, that was a deep dive into sort of the funnel that is our criminal justice system in Milwaukee County, and where certain points along that funnel had been particularly disrupted as a result of the pandemic, and really trying to get at the question of the extent to which we had seen recovery. And there were several areas that we found to be alarming. So we need to start with offenses, because that's the beginning of the justice system pipeline. And so we found at the time, and we only had data at that time through 2022. So we found at the time that offenses had essentially gone up and then back down, and were more or less in 2022, by the end of 2022, or in 2019 before the pandemic. We now have another year of data. We are seeing a continued decline in Part 1 property crimes. So as the mayor said, Part 1 crimes are the more serious crimes. Part 2 crimes, less serious crimes. I'm not going to go into all the details. There are still pretty serious crimes, can be under Part 2. But you get my drift. And then we further have divided Part 1 crime into Part 1 violent crime and Part 1 property crime. So that decline in Part 1 property crime still reflects, I think, progress still being made in terms of reducing car thefts. That's why you saw the big spike in 2021. On the other hand, we see only real minimal decline in one violent crimes when comparing 22 to 23, and a continued increase, still below the peak in 2021, but well above 2018 and 19 in terms of those Part 2 less violent crimes. Arrests. Perhaps the most striking thing we found in that report was the extent to which arrests in the city of Milwaukee had fallen. And we were unprepared then, and I am unprepared now to tell you what does that mean. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't want to imply that a drop in arrests is necessarily all bad, to the extent that all of us might agree that perhaps too many people were being needlessly arrested in these earlier years. Having some reduction, many would agree, would be a good thing. But really, the extent of the reduction was striking. And so here we are finding some rebound as we were able to look at MPT data for 2023 in terms of the number of arrests, but still well below the numbers that we saw pre-pandemic. The next data point I wanted to share with you, so this one was equally striking. We didn't have it back in September and for the Under Pressure report. We do another report for the Fire and Police Commission that looks at all sorts of citizen complaint data, and we stumbled upon this data set that we didn't know existed, which was field interviews and traffic stops. And so this is just showing you 2021 compared to 2022. We don't yet have the 2023 data. But this was equally striking as the drop in arrests, is that we saw, and we're breaking this down by police district, the turquoise bars are field interviews, the darker blue are traffic stops, and you can see real sizable reductions. So what does this tell us? It tells us that something is different in the way Milwaukee police officers are interacting with citizens as of the end of 22, and with regard to arrests, still the end of 23, when compared to 5 years earlier. Once again, is different bad? We can't tell you the answer to that question, but there's something different, and I'll get into how we are going to try to answer that question in just a moment. Just a couple other data points. Again, I talked to you in September. We started to get at, and Chief Norman was very forthcoming with us. We spent a lot of time with him and his staff. So why might it be that arrests, and now we understand contacts, are down? This is showing you calls for service. And so the priority 1 calls for service, which are essentially emergency calls for service, are that turquoise line. We have all other calls is the gray, and we have dispatchers for MPD actually track proactive activity conducted by Milwaukee police officers. So this continues a finding I talked about 6 months ago, that there has been a big increase in these priority 1 calls for service, which has at least partially contributed to a big decline in terms of the proactive policing activities that officers can conduct, which may help explain why there are fewer arrests and fewer citizen contacts. And essentially, with one more year of data, I'm not seeing a big change in terms of those trends. Another reason, and I don't want to repeat what the mayor said, it's staffing. I mean, clearly having a reduced number of sworn strength can have an impact on the ability of officers to make arrests. The good news is, with one more year of data, we see that situation at least stabilized in 2023, no further drop in sworn strength. And as the mayor said, a big effort in the 2024 budget is to start to build those numbers back up. I think it's very important to recognize that if you lose a dozen police officers in a given year to retirement, it's not like you can go find another dozen to replace them. You have to do classes. And the city understandably was reluctant to start new classes in a given year, not knowing what its fiscal fortunes were going to be the next year. So that has now changed. That's going to make a difference. And so that's what's happening with their staffing levels. Finally, just to get a little more granular in terms of what happened in 2023, and this builds upon some of what the mayor talked about. So what are we showing here? We are showing 2023 data for 7 categories of crimes. Some of the most noticeable categories: aggravated assault, burglary, homicide, motor vehicle theft, destruction, damage, vandalism, drug violations, weapon laws violations. If you can't read that, those are the 7 going across. And the lighter blue bars are comparing the 2023 data to 2018 data. The dark blue bars are comparing 2023 to 2022. So here we see concrete evidence of the decline in all of these categories when we compare 2023 to 2022. That's obviously a very good thing. At the same time, and the mayor was very forthcoming about this, for some categories we are seeing the 2023 numbers at well above the 2018 numbers, specifically in the areas of aggravated assault, homicide, motor vehicle theft, destruction, damage, and vandalism, and weapons law violations. So that just gives you a little bit more context to chew on. In terms of the questions that we are very excited to work on this year in partnership with the Greater Milwaukee Committee, there's 3 key areas that we're going to be looking at. First of all is follow-up to these question marks surrounding what is going on with policing in the city of Milwaukee. So we're going to try to dig much deeper into the factors that may be causing the reductions in arrests and citizen contacts. One of the things that we think can help us get there is looking at Milwaukee compared to peer cities. there was a very significant environmental occurrence that happened within this 5-year period of time, and that was the murder of George Floyd and the ensuing protests, both here and nationally. And I don't think any of us would be surprised if that had an impact on the willingness of police officers here and elsewhere to interact with citizens. And I think most of us would probably agree, maybe a little less interaction at times is a good thing. Maybe, again, there were needless interactions that were taking place. But I think if we can see if other cities have seen these types of drops, that's going to help us factor in that variable into the equation. Now, if they're not, or if they are showing signs of going back to pre-pandemic norms, then that tells us that something else may be going on here. So we want to look at that. We want to look at what are the impacts of what we are seeing out on the street on public safety on the one hand, but also police-community relations on the other. And we want to think about, are there certain types of policy and procedural changes that maybe are precipitating some of these factors, and ought those to be changed or reversed? And again, these are open-ended questions. We do not know the answers. The next area, juvenile justice. The Under Pressure report focused almost exclusively on the adult system. We did not focus on the juvenile system. There are some very rich data sources that can allow us to now bring in that part of the equation. And one of the things we want to really talk about, I was privileged to be sitting with Hector Colon at lunch. Hector and I are part of a unique fraternity. We are both former Milwaukee County Health and Human Services directors. So we had the responsibility of presiding over the series of programs and services that are available for youth who are adjudicated delinquent in our community. And we have seen tremendous changes there. When I was the HHS director back in 2006, on any given day, there were roughly 250 Milwaukee County youth who were in state correctional facilities in the northern part of the state or elsewhere, actually essentially doing time. Under Hector, I think you started there in 2011 or 12, that number had been reduced probably to the hundreds instead of the 200s. Today, as I stand here, it's about 30. And so there's been a big change, and there are a lot of arguments as to why not sending Milwaukee youth away to state prison facilities 6 hours away, why that is potentially a good thing in terms of the outcomes we are going to see for those youth. But that's a huge change over time, and so a big question mark is how effective are the alternative community-based programs and services that we're providing? How are those doing? So we really want to get to that series of questions, and we also want to look at the juvenile court and whether some of the backlogs and other issues we saw in the adult courts are still hampering our efforts to do effective juvenile justice in Milwaukee. And finally, we want to look at the Milwaukee Community Justice Council. Sheriff Lucas, if he is still here, he was a member of that council. It's one of our best examples of intergovernmental cooperation. It's a forum under which the mayor, the county executive, the sheriff, the Milwaukee police chief, the district attorney, the chief judge, other key justice system stakeholders get together on a monthly basis, try to act in a coordinated fashion to plan, to strategically react to issues that are coming up within the justice system. It's been around for about 15 years now, and we want to just take a fresh look. The Justice Council model is present not only in other communities in Wisconsin, but throughout the country. So we want to do some comparative analysis, and we want to ask the question, can our CJC potentially become more effective in addressing some of the issues that we're starting to identify? So with that, I am done, and I will turn it back over to Joel.
So we've given a lot of, as Rob often does, he provides us with rich data in a very brief amount of time. We've had discussion and some information from the mayor. So at least for a few minutes, we want you, there's some experts sprinkled around the room who you can have some interaction with. There'll be follow-up after this. But there are a few questions here that are on the screen that are really just prompts for you. And in some ways, part of what you hopefully will do is react in real time to what you've been hearing today. Where do we go from here? We all know if there's a theme I think that we have from everybody who is up here, between where we were 5 years ago and today, the results aren't necessarily acceptable. They're not where we want them to be. Where we were a few years ago today, we're seeing progress. How do we continue that momentum, and how do we maybe get ourselves not only back to where we were 5 years ago, but elevate ourselves to where the mayor's vision is around being a place that can attract even more people, that can grow more talent. That's what we're trying to do, and there's a whole bunch of things that are part of that. I'm not going to read these questions again. They are just prompts for you to either react to or to have conversation at your table. We'll regather in another 5 or 10 minutes or so, but please take a little time to have conversations amongst yourselves. Thanks.
Before I wrap up the meeting, anybody want to raise something that you heard at your table or a question you have that you would like us to follow up on? Yes. Oh, Heather's going to run a mic over. This is how Heather gets her steps in. So we need the next question to come from way back over here then.
Well, I just want to, I'm Frank Cumberbatch. I'm Vice President for Engagement at Bader Philanthropies. Our boss represented us quite well today.
Always does.
I must say, and he always does, yes. I want to say what I didn't hear, what I heard was excellent. I didn't hear a role for the children. The difference between 9 and 19 isn't that much. If you try to change a 19-year-old's mind, it's too late. You got to get them when they're 7, 8, and 9, and give them hope through play. They got to play. When children play, and positive thinking men and women play with them, miracles happen. And I'm a poster child for that. I stand here in this country because of exactly that. So I want to say to all of you, as you go forward with this plan, and it's a great plan, let's think about the infrastructure for them to play, the space for them to play, mental health, emotional health, physical health, and the academic transformation. And we could fix this problem. Police involved, judges, all of us, every parent here could help the children. And if we factor the children into this program, we stand a chance. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, right over here, Heather. See, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Heather thanks you for that.
Peggy, you did say across the room, right?
Absolutely. Thank you,
I'm Karen Home with Silver Rock Consulting. A couple things that were really interesting from our group, but Frank, I loved what you said about getting to the children early. We talked about the ecosystem and what's missing. We felt that the balance or the partner to law enforcement is also the justice system and other gaps in the system, right? Because otherwise the cycle continues. That was one. A second one, a component, another dimension we talked about was vibrancy. So how do we think about not only the enforcement side, but the vibrancy side? We talked a lot about community services and community advocates. And the last thing I'll end on, which was a real inspiration point, is sometimes the small things make a huge difference. And how do we think about addressing the fundamentals, which can be barriers to make life really hard to live? And so we talked about food, access to transportation, and a number of other things, so that folks who, whether or not they're returning citizens, come from economically challenged situations, or whatever their case may be, that they can live a different trajectory.
Hello, my name is Julian Johnson with WTMJ Radio News. I'm a Milwaukee native. One of the things we talked about is that although we have the physical ways to address these problems, but as well as a mental thing as well. You're talking about playing over there, and just everything kind of is connected regardless of what you're talking about. But one thing that we continue to forget to do is put the right resources into the mental health along with everything else. Because if you only attack different sides of the problem, but not all the sides of the problem, then there's still a problem. So, we were talking about here, I was telling them, like, I know people who have so many different things, have resources, have all that stuff, but do they have a mentor? Do they have people who are going to take the extra step to make sure they go the right way? Now, of course, you can't help fix every single person, every single thing. There's always a top, there's always a bottom. That's the thing. But how can you continue to shrink that gap more and more and more by using the multitude of different resources, not just one resource, not just two resources, but as many resources as possible? Now, that might be hard, but that's the solution that you would actually really want if you want to continue to move forward in the way where you can stop all this reckless thing, stop violence and all that type of things, or at least shrink it.
And let me add really quick, hi everyone, Charlene Moore with Urban Underground. I really want to touch on Frank's point. Yes, we definitely have to start young people early, or supporting children early. But I also want to remind you all that in different phases of a young person's life, it's never too late. So there's always a moment of intervention. I worked with the high school age young people, and quite a few of them are doing amazingly well. Wanted to add on to Julian's point. We had a really great conversation. It came up in the data point around recidivism. We didn't hear a lot around those sort of set of data points, and like what are the repeat offenders? What are folks going back for? What is that point where what are the services that are needed to support those individuals to make sure that they're not going back? And also the last thing I'll say too is I would love to hear more about parents. I think when growing up, my mom and my dad knew where I was at any time of the day, and and it was their responsibility to be able to support me. I know that our society and our community, it's tough on parents. We talked a lot here about mental health. It's really, really tough on parents. But at the same time, we cannot diminish that parents have a responsibility. And I would love to hear more opportunities and just, again, even data points around how are parents supported? How are, is it classes? Whatever, I don't know. But we need to put more ownership back in supporting parents to be parents.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. One thing I will add too, this is a note to you. Something that came up at our table was individuals commenting that they were not aware of the Community Connect Milwaukee program that the mayor mentioned about utilizing security cameras that are at businesses already to assist the city. So I would just ask Joel or maybe Heather, you could make a note to share that information with our members in case any of the members would like to learn more about participating in that program with the city. All right, I want to thank you all for participating in today's meeting. As we've discussed, and we all know very well, public safety and community wellness are things we can all stand behind, and we all do stand behind. We need to remain united in our efforts to combat the crisis currently existing in the city of Milwaukee. The data proves we can make progress, but it is not going to happen without innovation, without trust, and without the investment of everyone in this room and beyond this room. We're doing this for our fellow community members, our employees, our visitors, and all to ensure that Milwaukee achieves its bright future. If you want to share additional thoughts beyond those you shared already today about how the GMC should engage in this priority, or how you would like personally to engage, please feel free to take one of the note cards at your table, jot it down, leave it where you collected your name tag, or you can reach out to Joel. You could reach out to our public safety committee chairs, Dan or Earnell, or you could certainly reach out to me. So right now I will adjourn the meeting, and the fun part, today's giveaway. If you came in, you saw that beautiful box. There are some of us who are fighting over the box, not the stuff in the box. The box it's an amazing thing. So we want to thank Bartolotta and the ICC staff for hosting us today and for giving us this incredible giveaway. And Heather insisted I have to read like everything that's in this giveaway because this is called the Bartolotta at Home box. You get the box too, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned it's an amazing box. 2 bottles of signature Bartolotta wine, 2 stemmed wine glasses, 2 corksicle insulated glasses, a wine key. I'm not sure what a wine key is, but sounds great. I'm imagining it's to open the wine. A $100 Bartolotta gift card for when you don't want a Bartolotta at home and you actually want a Bartolotta at Bartolotta. And I want to thank Keith Trapton, Bartolotta, and the Carolotta program. And today's winner is Karen Hung. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.